There is a certain kind of person you have probably met at least once in your life. Maybe you are that person. They show up to gatherings, they smile, they answer questions, and then, one day without warning, without a dramatic exit or a public declaration, they simply stop coming. The texts go unanswered, the invitations get declined, the silence stretches out, and where there used to be a presence, there is now only the faint outline of someone who was there and then chose not to be. And people around them call it coldness, they call it pride, some call it emotional immaturity. But what if everything that has ever been said about these people, everything the world has labeled and categorized and judged, has been not just wrong, but profoundly, structurally wrong in a way that reveals more about the accusers than about the accused? Because here is what nobody tells you. The person who walks away from everyone is not running from connection. They are running from a particular kind of suffocation that most people never even learn to name. They have felt something that philosophy spent centuries trying to describe, and they have responded to it the only honest way a human being can. They have exercised the one freedom that cannot be taken away from them, the freedom to refuse. And Jean-Paul Sartre, the French philosopher who sat in smoky Parisian cafes and wrote words that still feel like they were meant for this exact moment in history, spent his entire intellectual life trying to explain why that refusal is not weakness. It is, in fact, the most profound act of self-creation a person can perform. Sartre believed something that almost everyone around him found deeply unsettling. He believed that existence precedes essence. This sounds abstract, almost like the kind of thing people say in university seminars and then forget on the bus ride home. But stay with it for a moment because it changes everything. What it means is that you were not born with a fixed nature, a predetermined self, a soul installed at birth that dictates who you must become. You arrive first, raw and undefined, thrown into a world that immediately began telling you what you were. Your parents told you. Your teachers told you. The people at school told you. And society handed you a role, gave you a script, pointed to a costume, and said, "Put this on, this is who you are." And most people, without ever realizing it, put the costume on and wore it for the rest of their lives, genuinely believing that the costume was the self. The person who walks away has, at some point, felt the costume. That is the key distinction. They have become aware, often in a moment that felt like suffocation rather than revelation, that the version of themselves they were performing for others was not them. It was a construction, a compromise, a slow accumulation of choices made to avoid conflict, to earn approval, to keep the peace, to be loved by people who could only love the performance and never the performer. And once you feel that, once you become aware that what others are responding to is not you but a carefully maintained projection, the attention itself begins to feel like a kind of violence. Yes, being seen by someone who does not see you is not connection. It is a particularly lonely form of erasure. Sartre gave this experience a name. He called it the look of the other. When another person looks at you, they do not see you as you experience yourself from the inside, fluid, complex, contradictory, irreducible. They freeze you. They turn you into an object, a category, a character in their own story. You become the quiet one, the difficult one, the unreliable one, the one who always does this, the one who never does that. Their perception of you is not a reflection, it is a reduction. And when you are surrounded by people whose definitions of you have calcified into something that no longer fits, something that perhaps never fit, every interaction becomes an exercise in managing their version of you instead of living your own. The person who walks away is, in the most literal sense, refusing to be defined by a look that was never accurate to begin with. This is also where Sartre's concept of bad faith enters the picture, and this is where it gets uncomfortable. Bad faith for Sartre is the act of pretending you have no choice when in fact you do. It is the person who says, "I had to stay in this relationship. I had no option but to take this job. I could not possibly disappoint these people. I have always been this way, and I cannot change." Bad faith is not a lie you tell others. It is a lie you tell yourself. And the thing that makes it so seductive, the thing that makes it so widespread that entire civilizations are built upon it, is that it offers relief. If you tell yourself you had no choice, you never have to face the weight of the choice you actually made. You never have to confront the fact that you chose comfort over authenticity. that you chose approval over integrity, that you spent years performing a self you did not recognize because the alternative, choosing yourself, was too terrifying to contemplate. The person who walks away has usually spent a long time in bad faith before the break comes. They have told themselves that it is fine, that everyone feels this way, that connection is supposed to feel like this, that the exhaustion they feel after every social interaction is just introversion and nothing more. And then something shifts. It could be one conversation, all one moment of being misunderstood in a way that crystallizes every previous misunderstanding into a pattern so clear it cannot be unseen. It could be a quiet evening alone where the absence of performance feels so much more real than any hour spent surrounded by people. Whatever it is, the moment arrives when the lie of having no choice becomes impossible to maintain. And in that moment, the freedom that Sartre said we are condemned to, that terrifying, inescapable freedom, becomes undeniable. If you have ever felt like the loneliest person in a room full of people who supposedly know you, if you have ever wondered whether the version of yourself that others love is someone you even recognize, I want you to stop for a moment right now. Because I think you have been carrying this question alone for a very long time. And I think you deserve to know that what you feel is not a flaw. It is not a symptom. It is not evidence that you are broken. Drop a comment below right now. You can write exactly this. I have been the performance, not the performer. If you write that, you are not just speaking for yourself. You are speaking for every person who will scroll through those comments and see their own experience reflected back at them for the first time, and feel slightly less alone in something they could never quite put into words. Your comment matters. It reaches people who need it. Now, here is where Sartre takes the argument somewhere most people are not prepared to go. He does not simply describe the condition and leave you with a poetic shrug. He says that because you are free, because there is no fixed nature, no cosmic script, no predetermined self waiting to be uncovered, you are also absolutely responsible, not partially responsible, not mostly responsible with some allowance for circumstances. Absolutely responsible. Every choice you make, all including the choice to stay in rooms that suffocate you, including the choice to perform for people who cannot see you, is a choice for which you, and only you, bear the full weight. This is not a comfortable idea. In fact, Sartre called the experience of confronting this responsibility angst, a specific kind of anxiety that arises not from external threat, but from the vertiginous awareness that there is nothing beneath your feet but your own freedom. There is no ground. There is only the choosing. And this is why the psychology of people who walk away is so often misread by everyone around them. The people who leave are not indifferent. They are not cold. What they are experiencing is almost the opposite of indifference. They are experiencing the full weight of what Sartre called the project of being, the ongoing, unchosen task of constructing a self through choices, moment by moment, without any guarantee that the self you are constructing is the right one. Without any manual, without any God whispering the correct answers, without even the comfort of a fixed nature that you can return to when things get hard. They are walking away because they have become, perhaps involuntarily and at great personal cost, aware that presence without authenticity is not presence at all. It is just another form of disappearance. Sartre wrote in Being and Nothingness about the fundamental project and the deep orientation that organizes all of a person's choices even when they are unaware of it. He argued that most people, operating from bad faith, orient their entire existence around being for others, around performing a self that satisfies the expectations of the look, around filling a role assigned to them by a world that never asked what they actually wanted. The project becomes the approval. The life becomes the performance. And the terrifying thing about this is that you can spend decades, an entire human life, doing it and die never having been yourself. The Sartrean horror is not death. It is the death of the self that occurs long before the body stops. It is the life lived as a character in someone else's story. The person who walks away is trying to avoid that particular death. They are, in Sartre's terms, attempting to reclaim the nothingness at the heart of consciousness, the irreducible gap between who they are and any fixed definition of who they must be. Because in that gap, in that terrifying open space that bad faith tries to close, the authentic self has room to breathe. This is also why solitude, for this kind of person, is not a failure. It is not a symptom of depression or social inability. It is a necessary condition. Sartre himself argued that the only way to encounter yourself honestly is in moments when the look of the other falls away. Even when you are no longer managing a perception, when the performance has no audience and the self can stop performing and simply be. There is one final layer that even people who know Sartre superficially tend to miss, and it recontextualizes everything. Sartre said, "We are condemned to be free," and that word condemned is not accidental. Freedom, in his framework, is not a gift. It is a burden. It is the condition of a being who has no essence to fall back on, no nature to excuse the choices made, own no external authority that can shoulder the responsibility. And the person who walks away from everyone is living inside that condemnation more consciously than almost anyone around them. They are not escaping responsibility. They are, in a paradoxical and painful way, taking more responsibility than the people who stay, who perform, who call the costume the self and never look beneath it. Because to walk away, to choose authenticity over belonging, to refuse the comfort of bad faith, requires you to own the loneliness that comes with it. It requires you to look at the cost and pay it. That is not coldness. That is courage of a very particular and underappreciated kind. So, if you are the person who has walked away, or if you are considering it, or if you have spent years trying to understand why someone in your life did it, take this with you. The psychology is not pathology. The distance is not damage. And beneath the withdrawal is a person trying to do something that Sartre argued is the highest human task: to exist authentically, to refuse the definitions imposed from outside, to bear the weight of freedom rather than trade it away for approval. And that is not something to fix. It is something to understand. And perhaps, if you have been carrying it alone for long enough, something to finally be proud of. If this reached something in you, yes, if it named something you have been feeling but could not say, please take 2 seconds and give this video a like. Not for an algorithm, but because somewhere out there, right now, someone who feels exactly like you do is going to search for something that helps them understand why they are the way they are, and your like is part of what makes this video findable for that person. And if you want more of this, if you want a place where philosophy stops being abstract and starts being the exact language you have been missing for your own experience, subscribe to this channel. Every video here is made for the person who has always felt slightly out of step with the world around them, slightly more awake to questions most people prefer not to ask. You belong here, and every week there will be something new waiting for you that was made with you in mind.